Hello everyone, I'm a little bit poorly. I think I'm kind of in recovery mode. I was a little bit smart in that as soon as I got the slightest sense I was getting sick, I stopped doing my morning cycle. So usually I cycle in the morning. I was like, well, I think I'm better off recovering quicker so that I can actually do stuff throughout the day rather than cycling in the morning, making myself feel worse, and then being super run down for the entire day and not getting anything done. So I was like, I think a noble sacrifice here would be to take the time I would have spent cycling in the morning and just spend that time sleeping in. So that's what I've been doing. I think tomorrow I might start cycling again, but we'll see. Again, I don't want to push things. But yeah, last time I was sick, I was like, I'll keep doing things. So I went to a genuine, legitimate party, like an actual party, and that left me feeling possibly like more ill than I have felt in like certainly recent memory. Like I really don't remember feeling as ill as I felt then. Like I almost felt like, in the olden days in Victorian times when, you would be like Mozart and you'd just be like dying on the bed like, and they were just like, they've got wasting sickness or whatever it was. That's how I felt. So we're just gonna jump into the video. One thing, I didn't post anything this week. Meaning I didn't post, so usually I post obviously my thing saying, hey guys, do you want me to continue responding to the video, and what video do you want me to respond to? And then I do a poll. So like the what video, like that's like just nominations, and I do the poll where you guys vote. So basically the reason I didn't do that is because last week we had a whole situation where I thought I was going to be responding to this video that I'm currently responding to called Are Genital Preferences Transphobic? Laddie Reacts. And then at the last minute, I realized that actually the voting had changed since I last looked, and I was supposed to be responding to the video I was currently working my way through. So I ended up finishing that and only watching this video for 7.5 minutes, which isn't that long. And I thought, well, I think if I do a vote about, hey guys, do you want me to continue responding to what I'm responding to? If you guys said you didn't want me to continue responding, that would feel a bit pointless that I've only responded to this video for 7.5 minutes. Even though I did say I was suspicious, maybe there wouldn't be much substance to it, but still, it felt kind of pointless. And, like it would be an insult to the person who suggested the video in the first place. And then also I was concerned that because the previous video, because I spent the majority of it finishing up responding to Inside Maori, and I called the video Inside Maori Response Part 3, a lot of you might see it. I don't know why I thought this, but I just thought it was a possibility. Some of you, let's say not a lot of you, but some of you might see that and be like, oh wait, is he still responding to Inside Maori? I don't want him to be responding to that. So then you'd vote against it, not realizing that what I was actually asking about was this video, which is what I am responding to. And then the reason why I didn't put up, so I also was just like, the shortlist is getting kind of long, so I think it's okay to have a week where I don't do it. But yeah, the important thing is, it's not that I forgot, I consciously decided not to do it. Let's jump in. Hello everyone, just before I get into this video, I should say that I discovered a little while in that I hadn't actually been recording my screen, so I'm going to have to manually insert the clips that I'm responding to, and you will obviously notice that it's different, because it won't have the interface of the play button and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, just so you know, that's why it looks different. Hopefully it won't be too obvious as a difference.
That you have to have sex with any kind of person, okay? You do not have to have sex with a trans person, or a black person, or an Asian person, or a disabled person.
She's starting out the video agreeing with us, basically.
Look, okay, this is a spoiler alert. Literally the next video I'm doing for this channel is basically about the idea of, I guess, how being transgender intersects with the notion of male heterosexuality, basically. That's the entire video. A pre-sponse is what I'm calling it to ContraPoints' video Are Traps Gay? Because I have thoughts on it.
have to have sex with anyone.
Yeah, okay, right. We're all agreed on that, hopefully, that you shouldn't have to have sex with anybody. No one's forcing.
Yeah, I will say this, like, this is like a thing in general. I think sometimes people hear, you should do XYZ thing, and what they interpret that as is, you're trying to force me to do XYZ thing. There's like 3 examples that immediately jump into my head. I mean, the first one is this one that relates to the idea of like, can sexual preferences be problematic? Look, whether you think sexual preferences can be problematic or not, the reality is, if someone says, like, basically, you shouldn't be universally unattracted to black people, the fact that you aren't attracted to any black people is problematic. If someone says that to you, they are not, in saying that, forcing you to be attracted to black people. Like, again, whether they're wrong, whether they're right, whether that's a legitimate grievance for them to have, they're not, in saying that, forcing you to do anything. The other example is like when, you know, Anita Sarkeesian was the thing, and the idea of feminist critique of media was really in full swing. A lot of people acted as if the statement, this media should not be sexist, was these feminists trying to force the game developers to change their content. Even though, no, that's not what they're saying. They're saying that, like, the content shouldn't have this particular thing. Like, if I say, again, it's just an obvious thing, right? If I say this thing shouldn't be the case, then I'm not saying, like, I'm going to, like, march around with put a gun to your head and force you to change the content. No. And the other example, so it's an interesting, subtle difference between Islam and Christianity. So I'm not going to remember the exact, I know it's 1 Corinthians 7. I won't remember the exact verse, but that's fine. But in the Quran, in Surah, I think it's actually like Surah 222. Like, I think it's like 4 twos in a row, but I could be wrong about that. So if I am, feel free to make fun of me. It basically says, your wives are farmland to you, use them however you like. That's basically what it says. And then in the 1 Corinthians 7, it says that if you are married, you should give up your conjugal rights to your spouse. So in other words, if you're married, you should regularly have sex with your spouse. Now, there are 2 really important differences there. The first one is, you might notice, one of them is more gender equal. 1 Corinthians 7 doesn't say wives need to have sex with their husbands. It says, if you are in a marriage, you should be regularly having sex with your spouse, because that's part of a marriage. Whereas obviously in the Quran, it's specifically saying, hey, if you're a husband and you want to have sex with your wife, you should be allowed to do that whenever you like. But the other thing you'll notice, of course, is that 1 Corinthians 7 isn't saying anything about forcing you to do that. And it's not saying, like, if you refuse to do that, then the other person in the marriage should be allowed to force you to do that. It's just saying you should be doing that. So that's not forcing you to do anything. It's just saying that is something that should be part of a marriage. And if that's not part of your marriage, that suggests there's some kind of problem in a marriage. And I'm pretty sure any, marriage counselor or whatever would agree that, like, implies a problem. But sometimes people will try to imply that that's endorsing, marital sexual assault, which obviously it's not, because again, just because it's saying you should do something doesn't mean it's forcing. But what you notice is that the Quran actually is saying, basically, like, you should be, it's not saying that the men should be forced to, force the women, but it's basically saying that the men have the right to force the women. So just a subtle difference. I'm so phlegmy. There might be like way more awkward cuts here because, I'll just find myself physically unable to talk. But anyway, like, that's just to say, like, that's just an obvious example of how there is a difference between, and I probably didn't need to stress this, but then a lot of people do seem to get confused on this point. You should do something versus you should be forced to do something. They aren't the same thing.
Nobody to do the do, okay?
You realize this is basically like rape culture in a way?
I'm okay. I just have a slight aneurysm.
So far, did I like blink and miss something? Isn't the only thing that's been said so far that you shouldn't be forced to do a thing? So that would not be rape culture.
Bring out the rape culture. Let's do it.
Like, honestly, like, if you don't fuck somebody, it's abuse, is what they're saying.
There's something wrong with
There's
you.
something wrong with you.
Well, again, this is the thing. Just like on the record, there are contexts where if you aren't doing that, it does suggest some kind of like mental problem. Like I guess that's the issue. Okay, I'm just gonna have to say this because I think this makes sense. Like we generally understand in life that if there are some things that you don't want to do, that might suggest an issue. If you don't want to ever go outside, if you don't want to make any friends, if you don't want to go to school or have a job and kind of be productive for society, if you don't want to get out of bed, like we would understand these are all things that indicate something's wrong with you. So I do think we have to have like a bit of just consistency and recognize that it's not illegitimate to suggest that if you don't want to have sex. I mean, it's kind of like the whole problem of conversion therapy, right? A lot of people who don't have a sex drive, that could be because of some kind of like mental health problem or a physiological problem. So actually to say the fact you don't want to have sex with this person indicates there might be something wrong with you isn't necessarily illegitimate. For me, like this whole thing of like our genital preferences transphobic, the only thing that bothers me about it is that I do try to be intellectually and morally consistent. And if I was to say the entire notion that not wanting to have sex with someone might indicate there's something wrong with you, if I were to say that's inherently illegitimate, I would be being disingenuous because, of course, we all know that, yeah, actually, what a lot of people call asexuality can actually be something that comes from a mental health issue or whatever, and that's something that might want to be redressed. So, actually, yeah, sometimes your sexual preferences might indicate there's something wrong with you. And that should be a legitimate thing to explore, and that's why, for example, I think that attempts to ban conversion therapy are wrong, because, yeah, like, people should be allowed to explore the stuff for themselves. And that's where, obviously, the whole should versus force thing comes into play. Obviously, with conversion therapy, I don't think anyone should be strapped down and forced to unlearn their sexual preferences, but everyone should have the option to explore what's going on with their own sexuality for themselves. So yeah, that's the only thing I would say.
Not having sex with somebody else. Like,
Right.
could you imagine like a dude using that as an argument to a girl? Well, you don't want to have sex with me? What's wrong with you? Like,
I don't know. I mean, again, it is like the weird thing about that is it's like illegitimate. For example, if there's been like a sustained period of time where you would ordinarily, I don't know. It's just like I guess I'm just too consistent. I'm just thinking to myself like, well, no, obviously there are situations where like if you were in a relationship with someone and they were consistent, I guess like the implication maybe is that, well, this is if you met someone for the first time, in which case obviously that would be a weird thing to ask. So maybe within that context it's obviously a more legitimate comparison. But like I was just thinking, well, obviously if you're in a relationship with someone and you were consistently having sex and then suddenly like they just stopped and it wasn't happening anymore, you would be within your rights to then say, well, hold on a minute, what's going on here? This seems to be like something is wrong. And, you know, maybe it would probably not be best. You know, we don't use we tend to find use statements unconstructive in you know these disputes. But to say, well, you know, it seems there is something wrong that needs to be redressed based on the fact that this aspect of our relationship has appeared to stymie. I don't know if that's the expression. It's in a quagmire.
No trans person is actually physically being like to them, you know what, you have to come in, knock, 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 you have to sleep with me now.
Allow me to explain.
Yeah, I mean, I actually realise I have very little interest in responding to Laddie. I'm just responding to, I mean, so far, like, I don't know, I hope this hasn't been controversial to my audience. I hope that everyone can recognise that what I'm saying is, I think, pretty reasonable. That, yeah, like, pretty much all I've said is that sometimes your sexual preferences, or lack thereof, might indicate there's something wrong with you. Which, yeah, obviously, like, again, I just can't possibly, hello, just had my Discord go off. Yeah, I can't imagine anyone would have a problem with that. But it is kind of funny that I spent the first half of this video, this video so far, responding to Jacqueline and Ariel much more so than Laddie. I guess there I would kind of agree with Laddie. So just in continuation with that, obviously a trans person might do that. A trans person might knock on your door and say, "Hello, I think you should sleep with me." I would say that's probably not good game.
And the whole trans community went up in flames, telling me that I was transphobic, that I was sexist also, for degrading women and making women just about their body parts.
Yeah, so obviously that's stupid. I mean, like that's the thing that shouldn't go unsaid here. In my view, the problem with the you as a lesbian should like have sex with trans women or be sexually attracted to so-called trans women is the problem is that is wrong. Obviously, the reason it's wrong is, I mean, to me, it always goes back to the fact of actually being a so-called trans woman. You're not actually a woman because biological males can't be women, and therefore, if you are a lesbian, you shouldn't be attracted to men. I mean, you're allowed to be, but I would suggest maybe that it implies you're probably not a lesbian.
Basically that I was objectifying women and making them all about their body parts and not about the actual person. Most of the time, when you figure out your sexuality, it is physically...
Sometimes the way people moralize sexuality, obviously you can moralize sexual conduct, but moralizing sexuality always seems a bit weird because, well, one, it's just kind of like a visceral thing, but two, I mean... Like, people talk about the term objectification. I don't know if it's possible to sexualize someone in a way that isn't kind of objectifying them, right? Because you're necessarily turning them into, I think in like a strict grammatical sense, they are necessarily the object of your sexual attraction. So this idea of saying, well, your sexuality and the way you conceive of your sexuality is offensive, I just think that's a very dumb argument to make, because your sexuality is what it is, and obviously in terms of how you interact with someone as a human being, there should be more to it than that. I think like sometimes people will act as if one particular aspect of your relationship with someone is defined by something, that means your entire relationship with someone is defined by things. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, like if you're just talking about a specific aspect of the relationship, it doesn't really matter if your conception of that specific aspect is reductive, because presumably that specific aspect is just part of a wider tapestry of the relationship. Like, yeah, maybe my attitude towards physical sex is quite reductive, and some might even say offensive and objectifying, but does that even really matter if it's just one small part of, like a wider relationship that's about appreciation for personality and shared interests and a certain je ne sais quoi and things like that. That if like I'm like, oh, what about the sex? I'm like, oh, I like the boobs. Okay, is that a problem? Really? Not really.
The one thing about this is I do understand what she's saying about the difference between biromantic or whatever romantic.
This whole romance sexuality distinction, I think like the reason why it bothers me is because I think there's a point at which when you try to factor in complexity into your conception of the world, you actually end up making it more reductive, because you're, in trying to account for that sexuality, that complexity, necessarily reducing it. It's kind of the whole problem with the sex is a spectrum thing. Like if you just say that sex is a binary, then what you're in some sense doing is glossing over all of that complexity, but you're not ignoring it. So I would say biological males, biological females, but there's a huge amount of complexity within biological males that I'm not even talking about. Like, I'm just ignoring that complexity in making that distinction, but I recognize that complexity is there. It's just, and what I'm kind of implying is that complexity is so substantial and robust that therefore it's not even practical for me to try to describe it, right? Like, I can describe it in isolation. I could say, well, you know, this person has this specific difference of sexual development, but the reason why my broad conception of sexuality, or sorry, not sexuality, of biological sex is just male and female is because in having that broad presentation or broad understanding, I am leaving it unsaid that there is this huge amount of diversity within that. As soon as you then try and turn it into a spectrum, now, because you've got the spectrum, you kind of have to account for everything, right? Like, you can't just say, well, there's a spectrum and we're just going to ignore all of the complexity within it, because, well, no, that's the point of the spectrum, right? So now every single part of that, like that diversity now has to be qualified and quantified on the spectrum. And what you can see is actually by trying to explain all that diversity, you've actually simplified it, because now you just got to put it on the spectrum. And it's kind of the same thing with like aromantic versus asexual. If you just understand sexuality as this broad, vague sense of being attracted to a certain type of person, yeah, there's going to be a huge amount of complexity to that. But because your broad understanding is quite simple, all of that complexity can be left unsaid. Like, that means that you are in not trying to describe it, recognizing the infinite diversity of it. Whereas as soon as you start to be like, oh no, we need to distinguish between sexual and romantic, well, then you've got a problem, because I would say that actually part of the complexity, for me, is that there isn't a clear distinction between sexual and romantic. That the two things interlap and overface and all that kind of stuff. So for me, that's just always been my whole issue with this sexuality versus like asexual versus aromantic thing. I feel like basically you are actually, even though you've added an extra option, I think you're actually simplifying things when you use that terminology. Because again, you're implying that we can kind of clearly delineate between sexuality and romance, which I think for most people, that's not a thing. And even the people who claim it is a thing for them, that they clearly distinguish between the two, I wonder if they're just not as in touch with the intricacies of their own emotions as they're letting on.
And I guess sexuality does seem to stem to have something to do with genitalia. I'm such self-conflict going on right now.
This video feels really pointless. Like, I know, like, I was literally like started this video off by being like, hey guys, you know, I really, the whole reason, like all of last week, I consciously decided to make sure that you guys wouldn't vote against me continuing to respond to this video. But I'm also like, I don't actually know. Like, there's this video, it's just too non-committal. That's the issue I have with it.
My view is whatever. As I was saying, my view in a last video, live and let live. Okay, live and let live in one of my older videos, because
it's kind of like, I'm just like having a moment thinking, like, isn't it insane that this person presumably actually considers themselves to be a man? Because I'm just like it's not, like, I was just thinking to myself, like, I 100% feel like I'm just looking at a woman right now. Like, a woman with short hair. Like, that's all I'm seeing right now. And it is kind of interesting because, I mean, I guess it's all about the beard, isn't it, right? And, well, the power of testosterone. Because, like, I'll be honest, when I look at Jammy Dodger, like, I can't pretend that I look at Jammy Dodger and I'm like, I just see a woman right now. No, obviously when I hear a deep voice and see a beard, there's part of my brain that's like, oh no, that is a man. You know, I've spoken about this before. Like, obviously, I mean, like, people, like, sometimes women talk as if they genuinely do just have, like, binoculars, that's what I'm going to call them. Like, binoculars allow them to immediately detect someone's biological sex just by looking at them at first glance. And I should clarify, not just detect, because I'm not necessarily saying, like, I can't, you know, obviously I can see, you know, Jammy's hands, but, so I'm not saying, like, there's no indication at all of femaleness, but I'm saying, like, it seems like some women are just like, no, it's not just that I can recognize their biological sex. I've not been recording this whole time. I've not been recording the video. I don't know what I'm going to do there. I'm literally like, am I just going to... I literally think I'm gonna have to like edit the clips in, because like 100%, like I literally, you know what? Here's the thing though. As I was yeah, that's it. As I was doing the intro to this video, I noticed I wasn't recording, and I was like, should I start recording? Because, you know, I never, and I was like, no, I'll just start recording when I actually start responding, and then I just didn't do it. So yeah, I'm literally going to have to edit in the clips, which is great. That's going to make this like a slightly harder thing to do. So love that for me. Well done, Michael, you idiot. I'm going to have to include a little clip at the beginning. Alright.
They definitely will not have sex with a trans girl. Thank you so much for clarifying.
To clarify, I never said I wouldn't fuck a trans woman. I said I wouldn't fuck a woman with a penis.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing. So we've already established this before. Like, what Ariel's saying isn't even that controversial, because it's not even about, like, biological sex. It's just about whether you're post-op or pre-op.
So do trans women not count as women with penises? Or we just...
So just, okay, that was a horrible face to pause. Tell you what, it's a good thing I just started screen recording now. Yeah. So, look, obviously, the point is, if you would have sex with some trans women, then it's not true that you wouldn't have sex with a trans woman. But the point is, you wouldn't, like, for example, if I said, there are some women to whom I'm not attracted, therefore I wouldn't have sex with those women, but I would have sex with women. Obviously, I'm not in saying that implying that the women I consider unattractive aren't women.
Male genitalia words and stuff like that can really, just saying like a woman with that, it can really hurt someone. And
Kind of felt like
Sorry, was the point that was a bit long-winded, but it seemed like the point there was that you shouldn't describe pre-op so-called trans women as women with penises, which I don't understand why not, because, like, if anything, like, that's like you're complimenting them, because, I mean, well, you're affirming their identity by calling them women, and then all you're doing apart from that is acknowledging, like, that they have a penis, which, again, I mean, they do, so the idea of someone being offended by that, like, that's crazy.
Like, they're erasing the idea of what lesbianism is. And to me, yeah, you kind of are, like...
fuck off. Fuck off.
Okay, look, I'm still annoyed at myself for having not been recording. The thing about, this lesbian erasure thing is so, and again, there's not been a great point to pause where they've singularly made this point. And when I say they, I mean, because I am technically responding to two people at once here, kind of three, kind of four, because I guess, I don't know if you've actually seen this yet. Ariel and Jacqueline Glenn are responding to someone. There is someone who's being responded to by Jacqueline and Ariel, and who is then they're being responded to by Laddie, and Laddie's being responded to by me. So sometimes if I say they, I'm not actually being woke and using a singular gender neutral third person pronoun. What I'm actually doing is talking about how collectively Laddie and the initial person, who I can't even remember the name of, are both making very similar points. And the point that was made was, well, how can it be lesbian erasure to say that it's problematic to not want to suck a penis if you don't think that, or unless you think that someone who did want to suck a penis could not possibly be wanting to suck the penis of a woman, and as such would not be a lesbian. So essentially, what they're saying is, if you think this is lesbian erasure, you think that trans women aren't women. The problem with that is, for me, it doesn't function as a criticism, because I don't think trans women are women. So I'd be like, yeah, you're right. That, like, the reason why that would be lesbian erasure is because that would strongly imply you are not a woman. You're not a lesbian.
No, what do you think you're saying? Trans women are just women. They can be part of the female, whatever. It's
Again, the thing about this is, like, if this is what you think, then being a lesbian means nothing. Being heterosexual, like sexuality in general, means nothing, because being a female means nothing. If you're saying like, well, obviously, like a woman can have a penis, well then what's the point in saying you're attracted to women? Like, you're not actually saying anything there. If this laddie person's going to be wearing a dressing gown, I'm going to wear one too. Because I'm cold. It's cold in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. I'll turn this light on again. Whoa, orange. Okay, that's more orange. I do have the auto white balance on, but clearly, we'll see if it does. Maybe it does it gradually, so you won't notice.
But you are presenting, and you still smell like a man. Your skin might be more rough. You know, your bone structure.
I mean, look, yeah. The thing is, like, and this is the really funny thing about sexuality that I'm trying to explore in my deep introspective video, is like, what exactly is it about a woman that I'm like? I am a straight man. I'm a straight man. And sorry to all of my gay followers, I'll give you a moment to recover emotionally from that. But so like I find myself thinking I'm a straight man, but, and suddenly they're all like, there's hope. You know, there's an interesting question, like what actually is it about women, like physically, that I'm attracted to? And it's kind of like I don't really know. Again, there's no point really, like it's weird, and I didn't really think about the kind of awkwardness of this parallel, just because like I say, I'm working on a video literally about this topic, and I'm kind of like, I could literally just repeat a lot of the points that I'm planning on making in that video, but there's not really any point in doing that, because, you know, just watch the video. So yeah, we're not making as much, considering I've spent a decent amount of time being like, oh, this video is kind of pointless. We're not making as much progress as we should be.
I think it's important to say that even if someone has transitioned, it's still okay to not want to have sex with someone, even if they do present as the gender you are attracted to.
Yeah,
because, you know, sometimes you want a penis or you want a vagina.
Okay, this argument, okay.
I will say, like, what Jacqueline doesn't address there is the question of, because Jacqueline said it's okay, even if someone has transitioned, because sometimes you want a penis, sometimes you want a vagina. What doesn't... So it seems to me like their only like they're still on the position of the only thing they're interested in defending is that it's okay to not have sex with pre-op so-called trans women, and they seem to not be actually defending. I don't know what they would actually say about this, but they don't seem to be committed to actively defending the idea that if someone's if someone's genitals are different. And basically, so if you know, a so-called trans woman has a neo-vagina, a so-called neo-vagina, that it would still be legitimate to not want to be in a sexual relationship with them. They actually haven't defended that position yet. I say yet, maybe they won't ever defend that position.
Okay. So
Which, by the way, makes it really funny that Laddie's acting like really offended. Again, I will say, like, I'm sorry, this is, as a React person who does reactions, like, this is F tier reacting. Like, it's just going, okay, even though nothing actually substantial has been said.
This conversation
and
before.
sometimes you want someone that is physically capable of having children, and no trans person is if they transition.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's not really a sexuality thing, but yeah, that's accurate. Although I feel like for a lesbian, that, like, it would be less of a problem, because, you know, like with a lesbian, you have a backup. That's the real benefit there.
One of the things that pisses me off about this argument is that, oh my,
like this, like, I mean, I'm not suggesting Ariel isn't, like, potentially considering the considerations of a heterosexual man, but obviously, yeah, for me, I mean, it wouldn't be the first thing I'd mention, but if someone were to ask, "Hey, Michael, why didn't you settle down with a lovely trans woman?" I would say one of the key reasons is, well, like, I actually do want kids, so that would be a little bit of a non-starter. Not to say, you know, I would not disparage adopting, but you know, just. It's not really wasn't my plan, basically. So yeah, like I say, it wouldn't be the first thing I mentioned, but definitely a consideration.
like their eggs or their sperm, they have taken it before they went through the transition, and they've stored it away so that they can have kids.
Yeah, I mean, well, if anything, from the lesbian perspective, actually, in a way, like, to be fair, if you were a lesbian and you actually, I mean, again, a bit of a contradiction, but if you were a lesbian and, let's say a nominal lesbian, and you found yourself a post-op trans-identified male, so-called trans woman, to whom you were attracted, and I realize there's a lot of ifs here, but, you know, this is just to bring to the point, and then my stomach's rumbling a lot, but I think it's low enough you guys can't hear it, but I'd be so embarrassed if you can just hear my stomach, like, rumbling. I mean, it's like a morning thing. You know, I always try and do a little bit of a morning fast, just because it's the only time in the day where I feel even remotely capable of doing any sort of fast, so I'm always like, let's give my stomach a little bit of a break from just being filled with food, but then it just rumbles all the time. Sorry, side note. Then actually, to be fair, it would actually be to your advantage that that so-called woman has sperm frozen, because you can do what no other lesbian is able to do, because I don't think there's any way that you can take 2 eggs and make a baby. I mean, maybe at some point you would be able to take the same genetic material that's in an egg and, like, transmute it into being in a sperm, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. So, actually, you know, if your concern as a lesbian is wanting a kid, I assume you don't need me to tell you, with my advanced biological knowledge, that actually having sex with a biological male actually simplifies things. So just for the record,
like, trans men will get pregnant and decide to give birth to a child.
Which is like the really funny joke about, like, how can you say being called a woman, like, triggers your gender dysphoria, but being pregnant and giving birth to a child doesn't?
So many other ways. Adoption, there's surrogates, there's all this kind of thing.
No, there's not surrogates. There's not surrogates. We actually don't buy and sell human beings. We don't endorse buying and selling human beings here.
Many of these reasons simmer down to preferences.
Sexuality isn't a preference.
Why?
You can't argue.
Is that in quotes?
Yeah.
I don't really like... it's kind of funny. They almost said, like, 2 contradictory things. In that Ariel was saying sexuality isn't a preference, and Glenn was saying, why is it in quotes? As if, like, the idea that it's... Like, usually if you're disagreeing with something being in quotes, you're implying that you don't like the suggestion, it's not the appropriate word to use. But whatever, okay, that doesn't really matter. I will say this, like, I mean, it is a preference. Like, literally, it is a preference. You would prefer to have sex with someone. Like, I'm perfectly comfortable saying that my heterosexuality is a preference. It's a preference to have sex with women, or, you know, to romantic date, all that kind of stuff with women. So, yeah. I think obviously I understand that, like, you know, you could also say, well, you know, someone might have a preference for sweet popcorn over salty popcorn, but, like, that's a way less significant thing. Yeah, obviously a preference can be over a very small thing, but it can also be something very significant. So I don't really think calling sexuality a preference in any way diminishes it.
Having to choose trans women is saying that sexual orientation is a preference, is saying that...
What do you think is the etymological relation between preference and reference? Like, what's the ference involved? Because, like, pre implies, like, before, and re implies you're doing it again. I wonder why. I suppose reference makes, because I suppose... I think I can see what it means. Because if you're, like, referring to it, it means you are kind of... It's something of interest to you that you're bringing up again. You're referencing it, because you're bringing it back. Whereas if you have a preference for something, it means that it's something that you have an a priori enthusiasm for. So you're kind of like, yeah, this is my preference. It's my preference. There we go. I worked out the etymology. I still don't know what ference means. I'm going to look it up. I'll look it up while the video's playing. Let's be efficient.
She's saying that you choose who you're attracted to.
No, she didn't. She is just saying preferences. She isn't saying sexuality is a choice. She is saying that all she's trying to say is that trans...
I will say this, like, you don't choose your preferences. So this isn't like a great argument, because, yeah, like, I have lots of preferences which I didn't choose. I mean, it's really difficult to think about the idea of like choosing a preference. Like do people really choose what they want? You can't really choose what you want because your choices are based on what you want, right? Like if you choose what you want, what are you basing that choice on? You must be basing that choice on what you want, which implies that your want is actually like exists prior to your choice.
Put quotes around it as saying that it's like nonsensical.
Fuck off, Ariel, you're fucking shaking. Oh my god, you're such a cunt.
Okay, we don't need language like that. Goodness me. So I think, even though it doesn't specifically say this, I think fair. Oh my goodness. Guys, I'm having a moment. Okay, so ferre means to carry. And like, oh my goodness, because like if you ferry something across a river, you're carrying it across the river. If you take the ferry over the English Channel, you're being carried across the English Channel. So that's so interesting. So because to prefer is to carry something in front of something else. Which means, so yeah, because it's coming it's before or in front of that thing that's being carried. So, you know, I feel like you can obviously work out how that would then come to be, like if you're carrying something in front of it, it's just as important to you, therefore it's your preference. And obviously to refer means to carry something back. You're bringing it back. And that's what you're doing. If you make a reference, you're bringing that thing back. But I would bet bottom dollar that the word ferry must also come from that. I love etymology. It's like just like the way things are connected. It's always so interesting to me.
People, sorry, I'm usually try to be so reserved on.
I really don't understand like where all this anger is coming from, because like they actually have not said anything remotely. Like there's a reason why I just spent the last few minutes looking up the etymology of the word preference and how it relates to the word reference. And to be honest, I'm glad I did, because that was like a really interesting little factoid. It's because like actually nothing that interesting is being said here. Like essentially, like I almost would struggle to say what the disagreement is about. I think literally the entire substance, like, I don't know, like what is the disagreement here? Because like I don't really understand. It doesn't seem like, because it doesn't seem like Laddie's saying that you have to be attracted to trans women, and so-called, and it doesn't seem like Ariel's saying that you absolutely can't be. Like they literally seem to be in agreement. Ariel's saying, well, you know, some lesbians aren't interested in penises, which if anything, that's a very kind of conciliatory thing to say. And Laddie's saying, yes, but some are. But like neither of them are actually disagreeing with each other, or like that it is potentially legitimate for some to be. It just
that she is saying that sexuality is a preference. She never said that. She just said preferences in quotes to do with the fact that people.
I suppose actually my other disagreement is I'm not entirely sure on exactly what Ariel and Jacqueline are so mad about, especially since there's been at least a few moments where it almost seems like their reactions have almost contradicted each other. Well, like Ariel said one thing and Jacqueline said another, and it's almost like they're actually disagreeing to different contradictory aspects of what was said.
Tends to be a really weak as shit excuse for being, oh god, how do I say this? Super transphobic.
Look, I mean, the thing is, and this is where like I'm going to come in being conciliatory, but when I say conciliatory, what I really mean is just like right and saying something that's obviously in keeping of what's true. Obviously, if you are transphobic, you're unlikely to want to have relations with a trans-identified person. So, to be honest, yeah, if someone said like, oh, actually, you know, if you have absolutely no interest in having sexual relations with a trans-identified person, that might be an indication that you are transphobic, especially considering that a lot of people in our current society have very negative feelings towards trans people, whether conscious or explicitly stated. And when I say trans people, I mean, obviously, in my case, I would say I don't have any negative feelings about trans people, but I do have negative feelings about trans identity. And yeah, if someone were to say, hey, Michael, maybe the reason why you're not enthused about the notion of having sex with a trans-identified person is because you spend all your time on YouTube criticizing trans identity and trans ideology and trans activism, I would say, you know what, I think you might be onto something there. That's probably pretty credible as a suggestion. I really don't think it's a problem for someone to suggest maybe transphobia might explain why a lot of people aren't interested in having sex with a trans person. But of course, that's with the caveat that I also don't think that transphobia, as it's typically defined, is exactly an illegitimate... I mean, you've got to bear in mind, like, a lot of these people think it's transphobic if you do not think that someone's gender identity is valid. So, based on how they're using the terms, it's almost definition. Like, if your reason for, as a lesbian, not having sex with a so-called trans woman is that you think that actually they're not a woman at all, and therefore, as a lesbian, you're not going to have sex with them because you're a man, definitionally, according to them, that is you saying you don't want to have sex with them because you are transphobic. So the real question, I guess, there just becomes, is that a legitimate way of using the term transphobic? But for me, I mean, you know, I'm one of those people who feels like the term transphobic, it's barely worth trying to truffle out some kind of legitimate use for the term. It's sort of just like my attitude would just be, yeah, I guess you're right. That is transphobic as you're defining it. But I don't think that's a problem. I feel like that's the appropriate response. Like if someone says your desire as a lesbian to never have sex with a biological male is transphobic, the appropriate response is just say, yeah, I mean, if that's true. I mean, it may be the case that you actually are really pro-trans, but you just have a specific desire for biological females in particular. But assuming that's not the case, which is probably not if you're watching my channel, yeah, you just say, well, yeah, you're right. You know, you don't, like, sometimes I feel like people just want to get offended. Like, you don't need to get, like, you don't actually have any disagreements, but, like, weirdly, on the specific point of why are lesbians not having sex with biological males, trans activists and gender criticals are kind of in agreement, right? Like, the agreement is that in both cases, you think they're biological males and therefore they're not women because they're men. Like, that's what you both think. The only difference is that trans activists will call that transphobia, while we would just call it common sense. But on the actual substance of what you're saying, you don't actually disagree. So you really, you know, you could save yourself a lot of aggro by just, like, when they say, well, you just, you know, you as a lesbian, you just want to have sex with biological females because you think biological males aren't men. You can just say, yeah, that's accurate. Thank you for accurately describing my position. You don't need to have an argument at all about it.
This whole thing just seems so dumb to me.
Same. It does seem. This is a non-argument. Like, I really don't get that much out of this.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Like, it's insane that, like, I managed to, you know, I feel like at the beginning, I mean, like I say, I don't think I really said anything controversial. I would be very disappointed if I find myself cancelled for the statements I said at the beginning about how sometimes it can be legitimate to say that your, you know, sexuality and, like, maybe a sudden change in your sexuality might indicate a, you know, like, that something's wrong. But considering it was, like, I mean, it was borderline like, there was a point where I was about to phrase it in, like, a very controversial way. I was gonna, like, I'll tell you what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, and I, like, stopped myself, had a little bit of a cough. It's good. I can say things in really awkward ways and then decide to reword them, and you guys won't know about it, because if there's any, like, weird janky cuts in this video, you can just be like, oh, he must have, like, had a cough because he said he was sick. And to be fair, at several points I have had some pretty intense coughs that I've had to cut out. But yeah, sometimes maybe I was going to word something in a really awkward way, and I was literally going to say the words to the effect of, sometimes I feel like this idea that with sex you should only do what you want to do is wrong. And, like, that's how I was going to word it. But what I meant to say was what I actually said, which is this idea that, you know, if you suddenly realize all of a sudden that you have absolutely, like, if you wake up tomorrow and you have absolutely no sex drive, even though, like, previously you did, that indicates there's something wrong, and therefore that should be investigated as an issue. That's what I wanted to say, but I was about to say it in that way, like, word it really awkwardly. And if I would have said that, that would have been very, very awkward. I mean, technically speaking, like, it's one of those things where, like, that's not necessarily communicating a different sentiment. It's just communicating in a very in a way that sounds much worse. Anyway, all I was going to say is that considering that sounds like a controversial thing to say, even though, like I said, I don't think it actually was, it's kind of a miracle I managed to find something controversial to say in this video, because this is, Like, there really isn't any controversy here. It's really funny to me because it is actually a massive non-argument. Like, no one's... Like, they actually have barely disagreed with each other in this video. Somehow, this is 4 people, or 5 people, obviously, because there's Jacqueline and Ariel. But, yeah, so 5 people all talking, not disagreeing with each other, and to some extent, like I say, there's been moments where Jacqueline and Ariel have kind of said things that seem to be contradictory, even though they're supposed to be on the same side, so whatever. Anyway. So everyone, thank you for watching. I don't know, is there anything else to say? Thanks for being here. I hope that you have a good week. And I'll see you tomorrow for a video that, will be very much related to this topic, so this will be a fantastic companion. Bye!